All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, when Michael Jordan won his first world championship in 1991, none of us knew whether or not the Bulls would be one and done, meaning that would be their only world championship, or if they would be able to extend their reign past the year of 1991 into 92, 93, so on and so forth, and characterize that time period into what we call now a sports dynasty, meaning a certain period of time of continuous rule. Now, of course, because so many of the basketball and football analysts on television like to claim that certain teams are dynasties when they're really not, really devaluing the term and the word dynasty in and of itself, Phil Jackson, not to digress, but Phil Jackson, he himself has always stated that in order for you to be a dynasty, you have to have won in consecutive seasons, meaning at least 3 in a row. Me, myself, I believe a dynasty can extend to a team that's won 3 championships in 4 years. So, for example, the Golden State Warriors, who won championships in 2015, 2017, 2018, I characterize that time period as a dynasty. The Lakers, of course, with Shaq and Kobe, was a dynasty. Michael Jordan in the 1990s, that was almost the personification of a dynasty. At least in the modern basketball era, that was the most dynastic run, really, of any team in any major sport, any major American team sport anyway. So now the question begs to be asked for Mr. Giannis Antetokounmpo and his Milwaukee Bucks franchise. Are they going to be one and done, i.e. Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, and the 2004 Pistons, Dirk Nowitzki and the 2011 Mavericks? Or can they be dynastic, either in the Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen Chicago Bulls of the 90s or Shaq and Kobe fashion, meaning winning consecutive championships, or even in the Stephen Curry and Kevin Durant fashion, winning 3 and 4 years? I myself, I just don't believe it. I have to see it first. As of right now, I'm going to classify Giannis's achievement as a Dirk Nowitzki championship, meaning he won the chip in a year that he had to win it, and that might be his only championship, at least until LeBron and KD are fully out of their winning primes. I think that LeBron is still in his winning prime. He's not in his overall prime, but he's in his winning prime because he's been able to recruit enough talent around him to make a viable claim to the notion that his team should be considered a serious threat for a championship. So until LeBron James and KD are out of their winning primes, I can't call whatever Giannis is trying to commandeer in Milwaukee a potential dynasty. So they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
The Bucks won their first NBA title in 50 years last night, and it does not look like an end is in sight. Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Drew Holiday, Drew now, all signed long-term, and the only free agent in their rotation is P.J. Clean Man Tucker.
I'll say this very quickly. In order for the Milwaukee Bucks to become a dynasty, they're going to have to show great growth from this year into next season. They're going to have to play regular season basketball with the same level of proficiency and intensity that they've shown in previous years, and then be able to galvanize themselves and persevere through tough moments in the playoffs in future seasons like they did this year. They're going to have to bring it all together because what they did this year is not going to be enough to win it next year. They're going to have massive targets on their backs next year. From the Lakers, from the Clippers, from the Nets, from the Celtics, from the Sixers. Everyone's going to be gunning for them. The Phoenix Suns, Utah Jazz. They're going to see an entirely different level of intensity from their opposition.
It's back, but Acho, are we witnessing the start of a Bucks dynasty?
No.
Not witnessing the start of a Bucks dynasty, but we are witnessing the start of a Giannis Antetokounmpo dynasty.
Here we go with this Ugo shit again. Oh, boy, I like Giannis. I just don't think that he's going to have what it takes to be that guy in the NBA until KD and LeBron are fully out of their winning prime. We'll see. We're going to learn a lot about Giannis over the course of the next 5 years or so because his peers, once again, his peers are not KD and LeBron. His peers are players like Donovan Mitchell. They're players like Devin Booker in Phoenix, Joel Embiid in Philadelphia. Those are his peers. Those are the guys that are going to be going back and forth with him. Now, of course, you're going to have to worry about KD and LeBron for the next 3 to 5 years. But by the time those guys are out of their winning prime and are no longer threats, Giannis is pretty much just going to be turning 30. So he's still going to have 5 more viable years of potential championships after those guys are no longer a threat. And that's when we're going to see who's the best of that generation of players. The Giannis's, the D Books, the Donovan Mitchells, those guys. And, of course, you're also going to have Luka. You're going to have Zion Williamson, on the back end of that generation. So we're going to find out a lot.
Because dynasties follow the best player in the league. Magic Johnson, the best player in the 80s, or argue Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. He won 5 chips in 9 years. Bird, he won 3 chips in 6 years. Okay, the best player in the 90s, Michael Jordan. We all know Jordan. He won 6 chips in 8 years.
Well, Michael Jordan really won 6 chips in 7 seasons. And barely 7 seasons, because when he came back, he only played 17 games. So when people say he won 6 championships in 8 years, yes, that's literal, but please keep in mind that he was not even an NBA basketball player for almost 2 of those years. So it's really more like 6 in 6 years, but he did play that 95 season at the tail end.
The best player in the league. Okay, Shaquille O'Neal, let's talk about the 2000s. He won 4 chips in 7 years. Okay, if dynasties are following the best player in the league, let's follow Kobe Bryant. He became the best. He won 5 chips in 11 years. Dynasties...
Well, that's not quite fair. How are you going to count Shaq's championships for Kobe also? We know that Shaq was the better player. Of course, the Kobe Bryant fans will disagree with that, but the NBA Finals MVP awards will tell a different story.
In the league, LeBron James, he won 4 chips in 9 years. So I can't speak for the Bucks. However, if Giannis is going to stay loyal to the Bucks, then it works for the Bucks as well. But we're witnessing the beginning of a Giannis Antetokounmpo dynasty, because dynasties have forever followed the best player in basketball. And if Giannis is the best player in basketball, which I believe him to be, then a dynasty will follow him as well.
I just don't think that Giannis Antetokounmpo will be as dominant over his competition as Michael Jordan was in the 90s, or as the combination of Bird and Magic were in the 80s. I just don't see that for him. I think he's a great player, truly great player, but I don't see the disparity between him and the other great players, even in his peer group, being wide enough to say that he's going to necessitate a dynastic run for the Bucks or whatever team he's on. But I could be wrong. We'll see. As I've already stated, I view him as a hybrid between Shaq and Kevin Garnett. So if you were to combine those 2 players, back in the 2000s, anyone would have said, okay, that's going to be the best player in the league. So we'll find out.
It's like you're hinting that Giannis Antetokounmpo is not long for Milwaukee. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, you missed my last sentence. You missed my last sentence.
But I heard
if
today.
Giannis stays in Milwaukee, which he said he would, then it stays true that a Bucks dynasty is on the horizon as well. But I'm just saying, where Giannis goes, chips go.
And I would even push back on that. Your stumping for your countrymen is just going a little too far.
Yes.
Nobody loves Giannis Antetokounmpo and what he has done more than I have. But let's try to keep the guardrails up, okay? We're flying off the mountain right now in terms of it's all Giannis all the time. May I remind you, Giannis Antetokounmpo did not get this done until they traded for Drew Holiday and for P.J. Tucker.
Well, I have to stop you there. The reality is Giannis did not get this done until he stuck his foot under Kyrie Irving. That's really what happened. And I know a lot of his fanboys are going to get upset. At the end of the day, that doesn't take away from Giannis's greatness. But he understood that his team was going to be way too overmatched if Kyrie Irving was allowed to continue to play in that series. They were not going to win. They had no chance. That doesn't mean that Giannis is not the best player overall in the NBA because of what he accomplished. But that's really what turned the tide, not no damn P.J. Tucker.
Importance of Drew Holiday in particular in winning this championship. But to answer the question, first of all, we have to ask the question, what's a dynasty? Is it winning back-to-back titles? Is it multiple runs to the finals?
I define it as at least 3 championships in 4 seasons, but really 3 in a row. To me, 3 in a row is a dynasty, but 3 and 4 seasons, I will accept that as well.
I believe that the Milwaukee Bucks can win at least 1 more championship because of the age of their stars. All of 30 or younger. Giannis, I would expect, is only going to improve. And most important, even though it's a small market and it's...
Yo, D-Book be going to the basket like he got a 45-inch vertical. Like, I mean, don't get it twisted. He's more explosive than he gets credit for. But he goes to the basket trying to dunk on people like he's Vince Carter or something. Like,
get free agents to go to places like Milwaukee if they have choices. The carrot is the way Giannis plays as a superstar.
I agree. And I stated that in one of these other videos. I think that Giannis will be a player who can lure other great stars or borderline superstars to come play with him because of how he plays. He's not a player who needs to have a whole bunch of plays ran for him to get his 28 to 30 points. He can get, his 30 points or 35 points just on offensive rebounds, layups, fast breaks, alley-oops, things of that sort, and free throws. He does not need you to run a bunch of ISO plays for him. So that means he can play with, hypothetically speaking, of course, he can play with a Dame Lillard, a Luka Doncic, a James Harden, and those guys will be able to get off, and he'll still get his. And the other NBA players, I'm sure, understand that and can see that. So I don't think that Giannis is going to have any problems luring top-shelf free agents to come play with him in Milwaukee.
Makes other guys better, and he's a guy that doesn't have to dominate the ball in order to do it. All they need to do is find a steady diet of 3-and-D role players who decide, you know what, I'll go to Milwaukee for a year or two for a chance to play with Giannis and win a ring. That's the formula that's worked for LeBron James. Very similar in terms of being a very gracious and unselfish superstar. Giannis has the same DNA, which I believe will overcome whatever challenges Milwaukee has in terms of attracting guys there. I mentioned the billionaire owners. They're willing to spend the money. So depending on how we define dynasty, yes, I believe that dynasty is there's a time for a dynasty in Milwaukee right now. With Giannis Antetokounmpo being signed up, they're not trading him anyplace else.
Yeah, of course not. But his contract does run out at around the age of 30 or 31. That's why I thought that it was a brilliant move for him to resign. I never thought that he should have left Milwaukee. Like, the media was trying to push him so hard to leave Milwaukee, trying to get him to go play with LeBron and the Lakers. And that would have made no sense. Why do that? You're 25 years old. You literally can get the $250 million and then leave there at 30, and you're the same player at 30 as you are at 25. Like, take the money.
Up for the long term.
Yeah, look, they're not a dynasty starting in Milwaukee. I don't care how you define it. No, no, no. Last time we talked dynasty on this show, it was during football season, and we were out there predicting that the Chiefs were going to have a dynasty.
Well, that was because a lot of the Chiefs' more prominent players were talking a bunch of bullshit, especially after watching The Last Dance. They let themselves get all hyped up, and a lot of hot air inflated their helmets, and they ended up getting their asses kicked in the Super Bowl. I think they learned their lesson after last year, and now they're going to be more businesslike.
On people, and that's a team that been to 3 straight conference championships and won a Super Bowl. So by that definition, are we seeing a dynasty out of Milwaukee and the Bucks? Hell no, they won.
Hey, young Marcellus got his hating hat on when it comes to Giannis in Milwaukee.
3 straight conference championships, and 2, they only have 1 ring. And it's funny now, no one's talking about the Chiefs as a dynasty because they still only have 1 ring. So let's not get into this microwave mentality. As soon as it happens, prisoner of the moment. Oh my God, how many are going to fall? How many?
There's definitely some recency bias here. The Milwaukee Bucks were being lambasted for almost the entirety of the playoffs. I remember very specifically Charles Barkley saying, Milwaukee's going to win the championship, but they're going to be the dumbest and the worst team that I've ever seen win a championship. So all throughout the playoffs, they were just getting lambasted and just ripped to shreds over how they were, playing on offense, how they were executing on defense, how they were forgetting their team identity. So if they do this next year against fully healthy teams in the playoffs with borderline superstars like a Joel Embiid or superstar players like Kevin Durant or bubble superstars like James Harden, they're not going to beat those teams. So they're going to have to show a great deal of growth in the aftermath of what they accomplished this year. Can they do that? Who knows? And who the hell knows who else is coming to the Eastern Conference? They might be getting traded to Philadelphia. If Philadelphia can pull off that Dame Lillard trade for Ben Simmons without giving up any of their other defensive players, the Philadelphia 76ers are going to be a problem.
Maybe just one, just like the Chiefs. So by that definition, I say no. Two, by the path that's in front of the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't know what time they went to bed this morning. Maybe they still haven't went to bed, but I know before they go to bed, they need to go to church. And thank God. Boy, that path was smooth.
They go Giannis with that goofy ass walk. They need to put that shit on film for him to see and say, look, never again. If we win another championship, never again come down the tunnel walking like that. Like you remember the Rockettes or some shit.
Compared to what it's going to be next year. I'm not taking away from their championship. I'm just going to guarantee you the path is not going to be as smooth next year. Teams are going to retool. Teams are going to reimagine. Teams are going to repair themselves, and teams are going to be recharged. It's going to be different out there. So for you to think you're going to repeat, boy, stop. Let's talk about the teams that have repeated. Since 1999, 3 different teams have repeated. Tell me if you think that the Milwaukee Bucks sound like they are in the caliber of these teams. The Lakers did it twice, Shaq and Kobe Gasol. And then Miami did it, Bron and Wade. And then Golden State did it, KD and Steph. Man, stop. It's not a dynasty. Enjoy your championship.
Agreed. Enjoy your Dirk Nowitzki championship. I just don't see it again next year. Unless Chris Middleton all of a sudden jumps up into that bubble superstar status.
I'll be still going on this morning and afternoon, but when you're done with that and praying, realize next year is going to be way more difficult.
Yeah, I would want to agree with you on logic, because on logic, I think you all are right. Okay. It's far-fetched to believe that the Bucks and Giannis isn't that good. Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, he's not even really a superstar. Like, just off our common knowledge of what we commonly believe about these players, it's very hard for them to have a dynasty. But Slick, defining dynasty is hard. Who's going to do it? I'll simply say, if you win 30 to 40% of chips in 6 to 10 years, that's very dynastic to me. If you're winning 3 out of...
That sounds rather arbitrary. I mean, is that consistent with the actual definition of a dynasty? If we're going to be literal, a dynasty is 3 straight championships. 30 to 40% of the championships in the next 10 years, I mean, that's rather arbitrary. I mean, look, I get it. I understand it to a degree because Acho is trying to lengthen the definition of dynasty because I think even he understands that the chances of Milwaukee repeating as champions are slim to none. So he's hoping that maybe they can have kind of a San Antonio Spurs type run or a New England Patriots type run somewhere in there, you know, where they can win maybe 4 championships in 9 years or something like that. But even that's not going to happen. Giannis is already 26 years old. And he does not play the style of game that's going to age well past the age of like 33, 34. He's an extremely explosive athlete. He needs to be faster and more explosive and jump higher and leap farther than most of his competition because his outside game is just not where it needs to be. He does not have the physical presence of a Shaq. So basically you have to get out of him what you can before he turns 33, 34 years old. Because after that, he's going to start going downhill and most likely rather rapidly. After around the age of 33, 34, he's going to be more like what KG was with the Boston Celtics. He'll still be a great prominent presence, a very intense player, but he's going to be more one-dimensional. Every once in a while, he'll have a big offensive game, but he's going to be more of a defensive presence as a help defender. Drew Holiday is already 30 years old. Like, he's about to take a sharp decline himself. And he's very inconsistent on offense as it is. Chris Middleton, he does not strike me as someone who has the mental toughness to take that jump to bubble superstar. I just don't see that. I think that he's mentally tough, but to be a bubble superstar in the NBA is a whole other level. Basically, a bubble superstar is a player who's maybe just a finals MVP away from being considered a superstar, like a Giannis or like a James Harden. You have to do great things in the regular season, in my view, to be considered a player that great. A bubble superstar, like lead the league in scoring or be the reason why your team won 60 games, something like that. And I just don't see that from Chris Middleton. As Marcellus Wiley has already expounded upon, for the most part, when you're talking about teams who even just repeat, normally you have 2 superstars on the team, Shaq and Kobe, Steph and KD, LeBron and Wade. The Bucks don't have that.
And 4 out of 9, that's dynastic to me. And the fact of the matter is, I just gave you all the stars, from Magic to Bird to Shaq to Kobe to LeBron to Jordan. The best players in the league, they all did that.
Right, but here's the thing. You said 4 out of 9. Nobody has ever described the Lakers run in the 80s really as a dynasty. I think that people have more described the Magic Bird tandem or rivalry as dynastic in that time period. And, you know, no one really views the Spurs as a dynasty other than people who try to promote the Spurs style of play.
Best players in the league. Tim Duncan won about 3 and 6 years. KD, he didn't meet the year threshold because he only played 3 years because he had too much tension with the Warriors, but he got him his 2 in his 3 years. Even Kawhi Leonard, if he stays healthy, maybe he would have achieved 3 in 6 or 7 years. But
Kawhi Leonard, and that's a great point. I brought this up before. His first 2 years with the Clippers, I think that you can make the case, were it not for the pandemic and also him tearing his knee up, the Clippers easily could have gotten to 2 finals. And once you get Kawhi in the finals, who the hell knows what happens after that?
Even the players that aren't the best in the league, but are still considered some of the best in the league, they acquire dynasties. So if Giannis is the best player in the league, and if he's not the best...
Tim Duncan was at one time considered the best player in the league. So give that man his credit.
Second best. We can agree on that, Marcellus. We can agree on that, Slick. Dynasties have historically forever followed those individuals. And because Giannis is currently one of those individuals, or that individual as the best in the league, a dynasty has to follow him. That's just what NBA history has shown us.
Marcellus, you make a fair argument when it comes to teams that we've seen repeat and have dynasties and who's at the top of that in comparison to the Milwaukee Bucks. It's fair. But I would disagree in terms of the path and what is there right now, particularly when I look at the Eastern Conference. Who is in the Eastern Conference right now that should scare the Milwaukee Bucks? Now,
who isn't? I mean, they won 6 games with the Atlanta Hawks. Like, even at the time that Giannis was hurt, before he got hurt, that was a very competitive series. Before he got hurt. The Philadelphia 76ers are a team to be reckoned with. The Brooklyn Nets, we already know for whatever reason, Rick Bucher seems to have an issue with the Brooklyn Nets. They're a team to be reckoned with. The Miami Heat, who knows how they, reconfigure their parts. They just got Kyle Lowry. He will provide even more toughness and better offense for that team, presumably anyway. I would not pick them to beat Milwaukee, but they're going to be a problem. And didn't they also just sign the player who formerly was on Milwaukee, PJ Tucker? I know PJ went somewhere, either to Atlanta or to Miami. So, these teams are going to be jostling for position in the playoffs. Like, this guy's talking about Milwaukee like they're the 86 Celtics or something.
Learn, now that they have that institutional knowledge of what it takes to win a championship. The Brooklyn Nets, do I expect them to be any healthier than they've been? They are very top-heavy and with stars that do not stay healthy. The Atlanta Hawks, I'm sorry, but Trae Young healthy, not healthy, I still think the Bucks ultimately are a better team. And now that they know what it takes to win a championship, that's only going to make them more challenging. Even in the Western Conference, where is that team, that dynastic team, or that team that's on the rise that is ready to knock the Bucks off? That's why I believe, again, depending on how we define dynasty, the Bucks certainly have the wherewithal to repeat or win another championship in the next 2 years. Beyond that, then the challenges of being in a small market and the salary cap and everything that comes along with being a successful franchise is going to come to bear on the Bucks.
Man, every producer that works at Fox was in my ear. Colvin, Heller, they were like, boy, Slick said top heavy, like that's a bad thing. Boy, that's a wild way of saying you hella good.
Or hella talented, hella super gifted. Talking about they top heavy. It's like, bro, they have a legit superstar, a legit bubble superstar. And if we're just talking skill for skill, a top 3 skill player in Kyrie Irving. Like, again, I don't know what this guy Rick Bucher's issue is with the Brooklyn Nets, but he just goes out of his way to try to talk them down. First, he said that they had no chance of winning the championship because of the defense that they played, and they played championship level defense in the playoffs. They were going stop for stop with the Milwaukee Bucks in the playoffs. Their problem was that their guys got hurt. That was their only issue.
The champions from last year, were they top heavy? Yeah, you got LeBron and AD. How about the Lakers? Lakers when they used to win before when they had Shaq and Kobe? Oh, that's top heavy.
Were they
What
top
about
heavy
the
this year?
Warriors when they got KD and Steph and Clay? Oh, that's top heavy.
Lakers were top heavy.
The Brooklyn Nets top heavy, and they're a big toe away from not even talking about Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks right now. I'm not even gonna go there, but that's the road ahead next.
The big toe argument. You know, the interesting thing about that argument is that it's just a fact. Like, literally, if KD takes a larger step behind the three-point line, that series is over. These guys are trying to make all these points for the Milwaukee Bucks. Like, the Milwaukee Bucks almost got eliminated by a Brooklyn Nets team with only one of their star players.
Bank on injuries, that's not the best thing to take to the bank. And the Hawks, look, now they got the coach. Now let's see if they can stay healthy, but that's a young team that already took Milwaukee to 6 games in the Eastern Conference Finals. Don't forget the Bucks had the
without Giannis.
7th. Okay, hey, without Trae Young. Hey, you want to keep going? They had the 7th best record in the NBA this season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Milwaukee this season. And then teams got hurt. We saw what happened. The Nets lost Kyrie, and hobbled James Harden. And then Trae Young goes down as well. Man, look, I'm not wishing him any ill, but you can't also say that your fortune is going to be greater because you're wishing ill on other teams that...
I agree. When you're trying to factor in, almost trying to say that it's mandatorily going to happen that players are going to get hurt on the Nets, then that leads me to believe that you know that the Nets are the better team.
Last year, I don't think the future is going to be the same if you're a Bucks fan. Coming up.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see what happens with the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't think that they'll be a dynasty. I do think that they'll be very competitive. We'll find out. So peace.